Hi there, and welcome to the Creative Operations Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Groom, and in this podcast, we'll be talking with creative operations leaders in all kinds of industries, from franchising to finance, from healthcare to hospitality and beyond. We'll be looking to uncover best practices and to see trends that are coming to help you keep your creative operations on brand and on budget at the same time. Enjoy. Hey, welcome everybody to this episode of the Creative Operations Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Groom, and I'm super pleased today to be having another conversation about DAM, Digital Asset Management. And this time we're having a conversation with one of the experts in the business, Frank DeCarlo of My DAM Services. Now, Frank and I go a ways back in DAM through conferences like Henry Stewart and all sorts of sessions that have been involved in creative operations. So, Frank, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, just to start, let's give our listeners a little bit of background about your journey, first in creative operations, generally speaking, and in DAM specifically. How did you come to this place?
Yeah, we all have our damn journey, don't we? Yeah, never gets old, but maybe with others it has gotten old. I came from production. I'm not sure which came first, the chicken or the egg in creative operations or DAM, but I've always been involved in improving efficiencies, workflows, processes. Might sound a little dated, but I go back to pre-press when print was king, before PDFs were sent to a printer, believe it or not, before the internet. So there was no web. Images weren't digital. There weren't digital cameras. There were transparencies, and these transparencies were needing to be scanned. So I was dealing with pretty large retail clients on circulars, billboards, signage, newspapers, anything print-minded. And because these images needed to be scanned many times weekly, I went to the president of the company of RPR Graphics at the time, and I said, "There's got to be a better way." And I'm doing a little research, and what I came up with, short story longer, was I found something called Portfolio, which I think is still around, but back then it was before it was coined Digital Asset Management. There was no metadata. It was you put your best effort toward a certain amount of characters in the actual tag of the image itself, and we started to build these libraries. And we quickly became a juggernaut and a leader in the industry in being able to turn all this work very quickly and making changes. So we got our feet wet with that, and then I guess in the early 2000s, late 90s, 1990s. Digital asset management became web browser based. And that's when we really took off because we developed one of the first SaaS models. And all of a sudden we had these big retail companies, pharmaceutical companies hitting our servers and being able to pull and distribute and collaborate. And that was just a huge deal. So that's where it started. And then Henrik and I think that's where, as you said, Kevin, we met. And Henrik and I doing panelist discussions and conferences. He and I would have coffee and talk, and we during these conferences you hear, and you still hear it today, no one wants to do metadata, right? The tagging, a big part of what the DAM managers are doing now, they have a different seat at the table. They're moving images and processes through the enterprise. That's is becoming a big part of their jobs, and they don't have as much time to dedicate to what could be a large percentage of entering metadata and just needing some support. So thank you for mentioning My DAM Services. That's where that was born, and we're having some great reception.
It's awesome. When we go back over the history and we think about why the entire category started to become meaningful, I think you put your finger on it when you said you just had a competitive advantage in moving files and moving work through the value chain quickly and efficiently. And DAM is just a central part of that efficiency. So business impact translates into software success. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I always loved it because when you have somebody's library, all of a sudden you're holding some collateral there. So we became a one-stop shop in being able to introduce all sorts of different services. And so I've always been a big proponent of digital asset management and helping any company organize those libraries and being able to expose them and introduce them to all sorts of new things that are going on.
It's fascinating. I've been following Gartner Group about the history of and the present and the future of digital asset management. And one of the analysts over there wrote a really interesting piece about how a surprisingly large number of really big dam implementations at first really don't live up to their original expectations. This is a challenging thing for any software category, of course. But when we think about that specifically, when we think about DAM and the things that customers bring to it, and then what they actually begin to see, any thoughts on why we see that kind of gap between expectations and reality, at least at first?
Mm, yeah. A majority of the time it comes down to, in my opinion, poor customer experiences.
Mm.
I try to stay agnostic. I have my favorites, of course, but it come. Unfortunately, unlike most salespeople, they're in it for the sale. So, what I've experienced or what I've seen is, Mr. Damn salesperson, can it do this? Oh, yes, that and more. Right. And then, well, what makes you different than the other damn system that claims to do the same thing? Oh, well, we have AI. That's another conversation for another day. But what I'm getting at is just buying a dam doesn't solve everything. And many times, I've heard, hey, we bought this system, Frank. Why is my team still not? Why are they complaining they can't find anything? And those of us who've been around the block, we know the reasons why. There's so much behind the scenes that needs to be accounted for. And as you know, Kevin, DAM is never finished, right? It's a living, breathing thing that changes as companies change and evolve. Of course, there's new products, new jargon, vendors, new people, new users, implementations, media outlets, it goes on and on. It's a living and breathing thing. That's why governance is so important and keeping it up to date and the attention it needs and deserves, quite honestly. A lot rides on the money that a company spends on these assets. You think about these larger companies, tens, hundreds of thousands of images, and how much money each of those images took to become an asset. You start to more easily rationalize the time and energy a successful DAM initiative involves or should involve, so that those images are protected and can be distributed and used. So I still chuckle. Go ahead, Kevin. What's that?
That's a really good point. I want to probe on that a little bit, Frank. You mentioned the amount of money that someone spends, a company spends acquiring an asset, distributing it or purchasing it. But this notion of managing the asset and having a cost, something that you could reduce to dollars and cents. Can you offer some thoughts? I mean, let's just say, for example, I'm the manager of an asset library that's got 100,000 assets in it. Some of them are years and years old, and some of them were just shot last week. But what should I plan on? What should I spend to manage that asset over a year's time or 2 years' time? Can you put a number on that to help us, think this through reasonably?
Well, that's certainly difficult. It comes down to people than who are managing it, right? You need damn champions.
Yeah.
You need one, or you need a few of them. The user experience, user adoption, the integrations that you're partaking in with other systems, workflows, processes, metadata, schemas, taxonomy, all of that. I mean, that all goes into how effectively that image or images for a company is going to be utilized, or how well it's going to be utilized, how well it can be found. So that's what it comes down to. You can have the best damn system on the planet, but if you still can't find what you're looking for because the person is searching for it in a different jargon or a different way, and that's not encompassed in the schema or sitting down and figuring out what's important for that company, then it's useless, right? If you can't find it, then it doesn't make any difference.
And it's so interesting, when folks are looking at DAM systems. They think that this system will provide the answer in and of itself, when really the system is a platform for realizing the decisions that they've made about how to organize and how to provide access to the assets. It seems to me that that second part of the equation is a harder one for folks to digest, simply because it's easy to buy software thinking it will solve all your problems. And let's face it, there's no shortage of damn vendors who are willing to say their piece of software will solve all the problems. Yes?
That is exactly right. So it goes back to what the original point was, right? So how well is that salesperson serving that customer and really giving the customer an understanding of what they're getting involved in? Because, like you said, it's a bright new shiny object. Oh, I bought the dam. We should be able to find everything now, right? Yeah, it couldn't be furthest from the truth.
Yeah, and the number that I saw when I was looking at the Gartner reports was close to 3 out of 4 really did not live up to expectations, at least not year one. And then you see folks on this thing, and I think you actually used the phrase journey. And you see customers who are on that journey and have acknowledged that they're going to be on that journey. Those are the folks who ultimately really make progress, because they had to account for the complexity that you're talking about and actually go and solve the problem. Then, whether you use dam A or dam B, it's not really the key question. The key question is, did you decide to go on that journey and pursue it according to best practices, which I know you guys at My Dam Services have great lessons about.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, with our experience, we like to think that we shave quite a bit of time and make the journey a lot simpler.
That's awesome. Well, let me probe then. It's a little bit of a downer to talk about failing to live up to expectations, but there's another side to the dam equation that I talk about. In recent years, the past 10, let's say, we've seen dams serving not just as applications in and of themselves, but really as sources for many other applications. Everything from document generation, the kind of stuff we do at Break and Nine, to human resources, to operations, to product management. We see the dam, serving as an upstream source of imagery for all sorts of purposes. So here's a question for you. Should dams, do you think, just stick to their core knitting of being able to find, discover, deliver, and distribute assets? Or should they take into account all these other capabilities? Should they sort of sprout functionality, or should you really think more modularly? What's your preference in that regard?
Yeah, I think a lot of that spurring and trying to stand out, right? The marketing aspect. We can do it all, and unfortunately, not the dams can't. A short answer, and I'm probably I'm going to be dating myself again, but I'm thinking about televisions. And the reason I'm thinking about televisions is, as you're asking me that question, and one being the answer for everything, I was thinking about when DVDs were starting to crush VHS tapes, right? VHS tapes are going out the door. But before flat screens, there were these big televisions, and you started to see it have a VHS player in it and a DVD slot. But something suffered, right? The TV resolution, or the TV itself, wasn't that great. The VHS player started eating tapes. The DVD got stuck in the slot, right? And the same thing with audio systems. I like to keep everything separate. Buy one, pick it out for the specific value and the feature that you're looking for, connect it, rinse and repeat. It really depends on. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's interesting you say that, because that notion of expertise in a narrow area makes really good sense. But when you're a software vendor, you might be looking for different ways to create different revenue streams, and not always what's best for the customer. What might be best for the customer is, I know how to organize and tag assets better than pretty much anybody else. Somebody else knows how to deliver the user experience for folks in finance. And don't try to cover too much of that ground, because you might not cover all of it very well.
Exactly. You don't want to spread yourself thin. I've been more of a proponent of doing one thing and doing it well.
So you're making me think of, and this is a plug for another one of the experts in the dam business, Ralph Windsor. Who comes out of Cloudinary, and I think has been a great voice of kind of reason and a little bit of skepticism. It's not to say that vendors can't do a lot of things great, but there has been, at least in my experience in the dam world, a pretty high hype to signal ratio in the selling of all this stuff. because once you have a dam in place, those things can get pretty sticky. It's hard to pull them out and replace them with something else. And so there's been a lot of hype in a category that really kind of functions as a bit of enterprise infrastructure. Not so sexy, if you will, but still really, really important. So it strikes me that what you're saying is try to avoid the hype. Try to find something that really solves the core problem, because you can always find components later to solve a specific business need, and you're going to want best of breed. Yeah,
absolutely. Baby steps. Figure out what it is that you want to accomplish first, and let's work toward that. What you're going to hear along your journey as well. Have you thought about this, because it can handle this as well? Then you're going to have you don't get too far ahead of yourself, because there's so much to do just in getting an effective dam in place.
That's great. I'm going to come back to that one. I want to talk about implementation times, because I think it's another thing where if we set expectations properly, customers will have a better chance, of really meeting their expectations, achieving their objectives phase one, as long as they think about it realistically. But before I get to that, I want to ask you a question. You brought it up. You said, you have some favorites in dam systems, and maybe you have some not so favorites. But ease of use, generally speaking. Ease of use, of course, is a really subjective term, and it's been changing pretty steadily over the past several years in the category of dam. I wanted to get your thoughts on ease of use. When you look, because I'm sure you see a lot of different implementations, as you travel from one customer to another. Do you think that folks are achieving, really superior customer experiences for their users? Do you feel like they're really falling short? What are some of the highs or the lows in particular that, customers who are thinking about this can get ready for the kind of experience they're going to deliver their users?
Yeah, there certainly are out of the box functionality that work really well. It has everything that you need, and some still require things to be customized. You need to, I guess, pick your poison. You pay for it one way or the other, whether it's in costs, right, time, or level of effort, right. You're going to be married to this dam system, hopefully for a while. So you want to pick yours carefully, keeping people, process, technology, and information in mind for those situations. It's going to sound self-serving, but don't do it alone, right? Because you're not alone, especially with all the help out there today. Trying to figure this out internally with the team, who might be largely looking to use it, and ultimately using it isn't necessarily the team that you want to go to or figure out what has already been tried and true by others. Don't make the same mistakes and burn up valuable time when there are plenty of other people out there, damn champions, that have covered that ground and pounded it and can spit it up for you.
I love the phrase "damn champions." By the way, I bought that URL. I still haven't quite figured out what to do with it, but it's a great URL.
I was wondering who had that one.
That's me. That's great. Oh, this is old folks home. All right, last question, because I know we try to keep these things, to sort of the time it takes to have a sandwich.
We can talk for days.
Yeah. but here's the last question I want to ask you, and it goes to those implementation times. So help us set some reasonable expectations here, because we've heard, in fact, I've sat on some calls, where dams are being presented, and you'll hear that, you can have something set up in a matter of days. And while that's attractive, and for sure you can do it, when you really think about a significant enterprise, an organization that has users numbering, let's say, the hundreds, with a library that numbers in the thousands or the tens of thousands or the hundreds of thousands of assets, what's a reasonable time frame for folks to think about, and what makes that time frame grow or shrink in your view, from short to long?
Wow. I mean, it takes months, whether you're doing your first or your next dam, at least in my opinion, in the experience or time that I've seen. With cloud-based systems, like you said, it can be activated in a few hours. But do you have all your ducks in line? Are they all lined up? We touched upon some of this, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody that might be just embarking. But all those different things that we started to touch upon having to do with information would be, taxonomy and the metadata applied per asset, the assets themselves, what file formats, previews, proxies, the people, a huge part, the user roles, groups, permissions, access control. Then you got to look at the workflow and process. Integrations with other technology, if you're not getting too far ahead of yourself, in some business cases, can be really tricky. So I feel like I might be answering the same point in a different question. I don't want it to sound too complicated, but you need to have the right people in your corner. And that's no big surprise, as with anything. People, relationship, planning, experience, having your objectives, clear goals, execution, accountability. That's what you have that in your corner, and you're certainly going to see success. And time is going to vary depending on the job at hand.
Makes perfect sense. What I'm taking from that, and I try to boil these things down a little bit, so correct me if you think I'm sort of saying it wrong. You would not be unwise to say to yourself, a damn project is going to take a significant amount of a calendar year. And it may very well extend into a second calendar year as you get through launch, and then think about what your phase two might be. And then the third point is one you already made, which is it's never really done. And that's because
right.
Your user community is changing, your asset library is changing, your downstream applications are changing, your business needs are changing. And so as a damn champion, again, I love that phrase, to be always thinking about what the next phase is. It might not be a comfortable thing to acknowledge is going to be a part of your life, because perhaps you don't have a dam right now. But it's important to acknowledge it as something that needs constant care and feeding if it's to deliver on its promise.
There's no question. And a big part of that, and if there's one lesson that I learned, and it took me a little while, was that all the players and everybody that's involved in it, making sure that they understand the same objective and they understand the same scope, or what it is that we're going to accomplish first. Because what I saw early on was this executive might have this in mind, but the marketing manager has that in mind, and the IT manager, director has this in mind. All of a sudden, now you have all these different perspectives. But if it isn't all on the same page and you're not pointing it out that this is what we're going to be doing first, somebody's going to be unhappy.
Well, I don't want us to sound pessimistic, but I did want for this conversation to be super realistic. And I feel like we've kind of met that objective. The notion that our committee of stakeholders needs to get together and be on the same page about what's priority one, priority two,
Yep.
priority three. That's another part of governance, another phrase you use. So we're at time, but it's clear. We can
Sure.
keep talking about this again and again. So Frank, I hope you'll come back and do a roundtable with us with some customers. Maybe we can get Henrik, who I know is a published author in this field, to join us as well. But for now, we'll call it a day with much thanks for spending some time with us to help introduce folks to the very powerful but not always easy world of dams. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. All the best to Pike and Nine and the team there. You guys are terrific. Thanks for having me.